really takes it out of me.
Yeah.
So the popping up of like more good virtual digital nomad communities really helped, because that was a good place where you could find people in the same place as you and also just feel part of something. But yeah, definitely one of the challenges, for sure.
And you wrote a few pieces on digital nomadism. I read one for Stylist magazine.
Yeah.
And how was it? When did you, why you went to an editor at the Stylist and said, okay, I'd like to write a story about digital nomadism? What drove you to do that?
So I basically had 2 stints of really extreme nomading. So I had the stint back from sort of 2010 to 2013.
That you felt like Bear Girls and...
Yeah, totally, okay. Yeah. And then I actually lived in Spain for 4 years and then went nomading again in 2018. So it was on that second stint that I thought, I feel like I'm quite experienced at this. I can bring a good perspective to it. And more people were getting interested in it, but weren't really aware of the reality of it. So I thought what I could bring was, actually describing, yes, there is the whole coconut sunset, flexible working hours thing, but there are also these challenges, and this is what digital nomad life is actually like.
Yeah.
And possibly my proudest moment as a digital nomad was when Tim Ferriss shared that article on his newsletter.
On his newsletter, yeah. Okay, but then talking about the challenges, did you ever think that you actually, especially in Indonesia, did you think about visas? What tax an issue at that time? Did you think about it, or that wasn't a worry for you?
I thought about it, and I think that's one of the things of being a long-term digital nomad is there's always one of the negative things. There's always this kind of like low-level anxiety about those sorts of things. Like, oh, should I be registered in Indonesia or Thailand or Sri Lanka or whatever? And really, I shouldn't have, because I was traveling quite quickly and my base and my business was in the UK. And whenever I rang up the UK tax man to kind of try and explain this, they were like, just pay tax in the UK. It's easier.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, it's definitely something that you think about and worry about. And now that I live in Portugal, I'm actually loving the fact that I can just be registered here and pay tax here, and that not be a worry anymore.
Oh, that's good. I guess it eases all the anxiety that comes with the uncertainty.
It's the uncertainty. Yeah. There's a lot of different parts of the lifestyle that are uncertain, and so that's just always under the surface, I found. Kind of in hindsight, I realised that. Yeah. Okay,
so I'm going to bring a bit of a trivia, and then I'd like to speak to Derren or Joana about tax. I might be delving into Joana's field of work, because some countries have programs which it's the visa that also includes tax benefits. But in Thailand, I think it was back in the 2010s, it was in Chiang Mai, I believe, that the police raided a co-working space. But I did a bit of research on that story, so apparently it wasn't really, they were not looking at digital nomads that were working in the co-working space. But the story was that there were illegal workers there, okay? And then the police came, and they basically didn't know how to deal with all these people that were working with their laptops, and they were from different parts of the world, and they were just released because, there was no legal ground for anything. So the countries are still catching up with all those laws. So and that's why we got Derren and Joana here to help us understand a bit of this mess. So Derren, you are an international tax specialist working with with private clients, and you've written books. So I'm not going to read your LinkedIn page because you are awesome, and you just let us know, why clients come to you, and give us a bit of your background.
Thank you. In terms of my background, I guess I kind of grew up internationally, in the sense that I was born in London. Both my parents are from Trinidad and the Caribbean. My parents split up. My dad moved to the
Sri
US.
Lankan Caribbean, you had really good food at your house.
That's cool. Thank you. And my mom moved back to Trinidad. So basically, I grew up moving between the United States, the UK, and Trinidad and
Hmm.
Caribbean. So moving back and forth. So I guess I've always been, crossing borders, so to say. How did I get into tax? My dad was a tax accountant. He qualified in London, and then he did the CPA exam in the US. So I kind of grew up uh, with that around me. So I guess I have daddy issues, so to speak. In terms of why clients come to us, that's a good question. I think I'd make sure that I'm pretty much out there. As you mentioned, I've written 3 books, one of which was an Amazon bestseller, but then any book could be an Amazon bestseller, so that probably doesn't say much. We have over 1,000 videos online. We have over 2,000 articles available free of charge on our website, HTJ.TAX. And we get some steady traffic through that. We're not a one-person show. I'm not a one-person show. I've been based in Singapore since 2013, October 2013. So our practice there is a member of Moore's Rule in Asia Pacific. So it's not the biggest, but it's a decent mid-tier firm in Asia. So we have like 30 offices between Tokyo and Beijing up north, down to Sydney and Melbourne down south, and across to India as well. I do a fair bit of work in Indonesia. In Indonesia, Moore's Rowland is the 5th largest accounting firm in Indonesia, based in Jakarta, satellite office in Bali. During COVID, we set up, well, I took advantage of what was happening. I was locked. I was actually in Bali when Singapore shut their airport sometime the end of Feb, early March 2020. And so I couldn't get back into Singapore. So I eventually meandered through Japan back to the US. And I spent time there, but I needed to count my days in the US. So I immediately activated my plan B, which was to set up base in Portugal. So I've been using Portugal as a base during COVID, Portugal, UK, and also Dubai. So we have offices there now as a result. So yeah, so the point is, people come to us, we know our stuff. One person cannot know everything. So I'm blessed to have surrounded me a really nice bunch of people, lawyers and accountants, who can help clients that are working remotely or maybe just expats navigate what can be a really tricky offshore world.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd like to ask you, since it's a difficult offshore world, so let's learn more about it.
Sure.
So with the context of I won't call digital nomads, I will call remote workers. So some remote workers that might be financially savvy, they will, like Elly is, I'm going to make my money more productive if I go to a country that, will make my money work. So now, what happens with my taxes? Do I pay taxes, or does it depend on the length of time? Do I pay my taxes there where I'm staying, or do I pay my taxes in a country that I receive my income? How does that work? I know it's a very generic question, very simple, but maybe it's not a simple answer. But yeah, what do you think?
So I guess to answer your question specifically, it really depends. I put people in 3 buckets. There are those that are US exposed as a result of being US citizens, residents, green card holders, or those that may have triggered substantial presence by spending a lot of time in the US. There are
Mhm.
those from Europe, and in Europe, I'm gonna, you know, include Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and then there's the rest of the world, right?
Okay.
So I'll start with the first bucket. In terms of those who are from the US or exposed, US exposed, and including those, because we had a lot of clients that were trapped in the US during COVID. They didn't intend to stay that long, but they did, and they became US tax residents as a result of
Mhm.
triggering substantial presence, right? You're going to be taxed on your worldwide income, regardless of where you go. So even if you're in Bali, wherever you go, you still need to file and pay tax returns. So there's no difference between Portugal and Pittsburgh from the IRS's perspective. But with some planning, they can take advantage of certain deductions and exclusions to make them better off. The second bucket would be your Europeans. And again, I'm including Brits, Canadians, Aussies, Kiwis. They can sever tax residence by just simply not being in their country. So jump on a plane, go to Bali, for example. But there are, most of these countries have a days test as well as a center of life test or center of economic activity test. So even though you may be based in Bali, if it is that you still have substantial ties to the UK or to France or to whatever, then you may deem the throwback rules apply and you may still be tax resident there. So generally speaking, one has to be very careful to do the right things to sever ties. And then the third bucket will be the rest of the world. And all they need to do is jump on a plane and leave, and they should be fine. So those generally speaking, how it works. Yeah.
Okay, that's from tax perspective. Oh, thank you. I thought it would be much more complicated to answer this question, but I like the bucket. To make it much easier. Now we do have. Yes, I can understand from a tax perspective, but now I'd like to ask Joana. I know it's not that simple. Maybe it might be easier if you're on a Schengen space and so on. And there is this kind of this conundrum in the digital nomad world that the immigration has bigger fish to catch. Obviously, you know, if you are replying to your emails on the beach, you know, if you just want your laptop to be filthy with sand, and then it's very unlikely that immigration will come to you and say, where's your visa? And then if they come, you're like, oh, I was just replying to a few emails from work. So what do you think is the best solution for a digital nomad, you know, kind of on a visa perspective, if they're going to work remotely?
Okay, so first of all, thanks for having me here.
Welcome.
Thank you. I think that there are many challenges for digital nomads. On the visa side, there's a lot of red tape to overcome. Probably know that already. Few countries allow tourists to fall in love with the country and just stay there and start working from there. That's not how the visa policy was designed. The visa policy was designed as a plan that you do prior to moving to a different country. So there are a lot of challenges to overcome here. From the point of view of social security, it's very different. Countries vary greatly in terms of social security and rule of law. They have different concepts, so every time you move to a different country, such country will look at social security in a different way. So I think it's very important now that the countries have an answer to this problem. They should. We need more bilateral agreements regarding social security, just to tackle the problem. And we have it for tax purposes already. We have lots of double taxation agreements. We don't have that many social security agreements, and usually they cover pension and different things, not exactly contributions done while working. Also, labor laws are a problem because while in Europe, labor laws are very demanding on the employer, they are much more flexible in other countries. So companies from different parts of the world, they are not happy when their employees move to Europe because there is a lot of red tape to deal with. And it doesn't make it easier for employees to move to Europe for that reason, of course.